portions of the country have only been free of Saddam Hussein for the last week. So you get into the question, well, what do you mean by a theocracy precisely? So you get into depth. What you want to try to do is to have external influences muted or eliminated to the extent possible. And the Iraqi people, I think, over time, will not want influence from Iran in their country. They won't want influence from Syria in their country. Now, there will be some people who will. You know, there's Baath Party members who would like to have influence from the Baath Party in Syria. There'll be some people who may be pro-Iranian who would like that. But the broad center of gravity in that country is not going to want their neighbors to be running their country to the extent possible. And the Iraqi people, I think, over time, will not want influence from Iran. And if you're suggesting how would we feel about an Iranian-type government with a few clerics running everything in the country, the answer is that isn't going to happen. Just don't see how that's going to happen.
May I follow up?
Local citizens come up and say, look, here's the old Baath Party headquarters. Come in here, there's a cache of weapons, or the government. And the way that's happening is in a number of places there's joint patrols. There hadn't been a day that's gone by in the past week where we haven't picked up one or two of these relatively senior people. Everyone's talking about this deck of cards of 55, I don't know how they got 55 instead of 52, but in fact we have a list of some 200. That original list was purposely kept low at the outset because we wanted to separate the worst people from the regime, hoping that others would come forward, and indeed that's happened. But our actual list is much larger than the 55, and we keep picking people up every day. Mostly, sometimes it's at a checkpoint trying to get into Syria, sometimes it's scooped up with a group of people. But in at least half the cases, it's because somebody points them out and says, look, down the street there's somebody you ought to want to talk to. And that's a very encouraging thing. So it's a little early to be impatient about it, so I can't be impatient, although the natural thing is to be impatient about it. What we want to do is to first assure that there's a relatively permissive environment, a secure environment, and indeed every indication is that in large portions of the country that's the case today. Increasingly, a number of humanitarian people who are only allowed to do emergency situations are saying, well, we're leaving because there is not an emergency. The water problem's been fixed, the food is adequate, and the like. But we need to continue that process, first of seeing that everything's secure, then seeing that the basic needs are met, food, water, and then the next step is to see that the Iraqi people begin to be involved in their communities and in the development of a national government. And the way that's happening is in a number of places there's joint patrols taking place for security, and there are Iraqis working with American and British military forces. In some cases they are actually forming town councils and beginning that process. I guess it was Jefferson who said you don't go from despotism to freedom on a feather bed. And anyone who thinks it's easy is wrong. It's hard. And we saw that in Eastern Europe. We saw that the bumps in what's left of the remnants, the republics from the former Soviet Union. And we know that. It isn't easy. So we just have to take a little time, and it's coming along well. An Iranian-type government with a few clerics.
Precedent for Iraq that you should measure the presence of the military?
I think there will be the beginning of an interim authority soon. I don't know quite what soon means, but they're working on it. They're talking to people about how that would work. They're having the beginnings of these meetings around the country. And as you realize, there's some portions of the country have only been free of Saddam Hussein for the last week. So it's a little early to be impatient about it, so I can't be impatient, although the natural thing is to be impatient about it. You want the Iraqis to govern themselves. The next step, of course, much prefer to be a place where we not only are wanted in the country we're in, but the access in and out of it by air and by sea or by land is is readily facilitated, rather to say we continue to be opposed to proliferation of ballistic missiles and technologies that relate to weapons of mass destruction.